My stepmother is now pleading me not to disclose the secret bank account that I have recently discovered. Ever since Dad passed away 2 years ago, life has never been the same again. Life was just starting to look hopeful again when I made that strange discovery. My father was not a perfect man, but I always looked up to him. He worked all his life and would stay up late into the night working on his small company just so it does not go under. Even during those final years in which things were difficult for him before he died, I trusted that he had everything under control. He always assured me that things would be fine and that he was thinking ahead for both Karen, my stepmom, and myself. If you don't follow our channel, it may never be seen again by you. But if you are subscribed, bravo. You can watch or listen to the most fascinating stories in the world whenever you want. I was thoroughly shocked when he suddenly died of heart attack. The financial crisis started just as I was beginning to mourn. I knew that his business had been failing, but I certainly didn't know how bad things were. A few months after his death, Karen sold our family home, and I did not question her decision. She maintained that she could not stay there any longer because it reminded her of him. Of course, she was right. Though we weren't very close, she remained his wife, and I admired her for being there with him all these years, even in rough times. The money was the least of my concern. Karen told me that after paying for funeral and other miscellaneous bills, we were practically left with nothing. I believed her. I mean, why should she lie? So she sold the house and moved into a less expensive apartment on the other side of town. On my part, I managed to get by as I could pay off medical bills incurred on uninsured visits and some of Dad's liabilities which were outstanding. I did not even think that Karen lived as comfortably as I did. But then everything changed last weekend. So this past weekend saw me back in the old house Karen had already sold to collect Dad's stuff prior to our final moving day. There were only few boxes with personal items left in it, except that it seemed almost empty. When he died, I didn't have the energy to go through every item, but now there was no house, so this was my only opportunity. Honestly, all I hoped to find were some old photographs and perhaps a bundle of forgotten papers or two. But once my eyes fell upon a file hidden way at the rear end of his old desk, my heart sank within me. I opened the folder. At the beginning, I quickly looked through it as if they were outdated. However, I noticed something, a recent date followed by a huge number. I stopped what I was doing. It did not look right to me, and there was no meaning in it. As my hands shook with fear, I flipped through the pages and realized where my eyes had landed on. In black and white, there are some statements that have been hidden away in a secret bank account. Moreover, it wasn't just a small amount. There were millions of dollars in there that my dad never mentioned to me in his lifetime. Karen has never told me about this money throughout the entire period of 2 years from his death till now. It felt like breathing was impossible for me at that moment. What made Karen hide this? Why did she sell our house pretending she had nothing when she had millions? It didn't fit together. Can it be that all this while she was planning not to disclose? I needed answers, and I could not wait any longer for them. Karen's apartment ride seemed like a flash. I do not even recall getting into the car, let alone what I said on calling her to inform her that I was on my way. However, the rage pulsated through me, and my veins were full of anger. It was as if every mile was eroded by this betrayal. Upon my arrival, Karen smiled at me in a way that made me shudder. She didn't know the impending disaster. "Oh, Ethan, it's nice to see you," she exclaimed in a very sugary voice while opening the door. "Is everything all right?" I couldn't look at her, though. My anger overflowed, resulting to throwing of the bank statements onto her kitchen table before realizing it. Her face went sheet white immediately. She didn't have to ask what they were for. She knew them too well. What is this?" Her voice quivered, and she stared down at the papers as if seeing something unimaginable. "You can tell me, Karen," I burst out. My voice doesn't matter whether it trembles with these words of anger. "How many millions? All this time you have known and never told me anything when I was trying to settle my dad's debts? While you were telling me we had nothing." Karen looked at me blankly. Her eyes widened with fear. "Ethan, let me justify yourself." I couldn't help but interrupt her. "Explain how you sold the house and allowed me to sink in his liabilities as you sat on this." She slumped into a chair, tears starting to pool in her eyes. "But I don't feel sorry for her anymore. My father, he set that account up for me," she said, her voice trembling with fear. "It was meant to be a backup plan. He wanted to make sure I would not end up with nothing in the event that he's gone." I sneered. "And what about me? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think this could be hidden from me forever?" Karen rubbed her eyes, but it did not work. The guilt was all over her face. I didn't know how," she faltered, then went on. "I just couldn't find a way to tell you. It seemed like learning about it would make you believe I intended stealing from you through that transaction." "No, I wasn't. I wasn't ready. My head shook in disbelief as reality washed over me. So you just let me suffer? You sold the house and left me with all of Dad's debts while keeping this secret? Karen got up, her face now white and her voice desperate. Ethan, please. You don't. I know exactly what happened. I snapped at her angrily, my voice filled with contempt. You lied. Tears streamed down Karen's face as she trembled helplessly in front of him. I panicked. There were no right moves for me to undertake after your father passed away. Everything started falling apart then. I suspected. I believed that I could find the solution myself, but I was mistaken. The sound of her voice was empty in my perception. It wasn't about being afraid or unsure anymore. That was just betrayal, plain and simple. What hurt me most was that she had let me carry the load of my father's heritage while she sat on millions of dollars. I can't believe this, I muttered as I paced about the room trying to grapple with its gravity. How long were you planning to keep this from me? I wasn't going to keep it forever, she protested, standing up now, reaching out towards me. I just needed time. I didn't want you to think I was a terrible person. I didn't want to ruin our relationship. Our relationship? Bitter laughter escaped my lips. Karen, there is no relationship anymore. Without another word, I turned and stormed out of her apartment, leaving her crying at the kitchen table. What should be done next remained unknown to me, but one thing was certain. She couldn't be trusted again by any means under whatever circumstances again. After that, I was very angry for many days. The anger ate away at me the whole time. It did not let me sleep. It controlled my mind and finally got all over my thoughts. Karen too made an attempt to explain, but it never mattered anymore as what happened couldn't be undone. Her calls were ignored by me, frightened by her name appearing on my screen every time. I could not bear listening to more lies from him or her since I needed genuine replies, so I started investigating. I went through his old stuff looking for a clue as to why he had established that secret account or why he left Karen with all he had, and yet left me with nothing except debts. At some point, I found more than enough than what I expected. Karen had a history she never explained about. She wasn't married to Dad before this. She'd been married before, all right. In fact, she'd done so more than once, but all ended up in the same manner. There would be money missing, then trouble with the finances, and eventually the person leaves abruptly. The revelation was unbelievable to me. She had done it before to other men, not just my father. She had a plan, and now everything became clear. She has been taking money out of his business accounts for trips, purchasing luxury items, and hidden them from him. Currently, she is claiming to be innocent. I wanted more details about this issue, therefore I decided to see Tom, who was Dad's friend for a long time and used to work with him in business. From the time when Karen came into our lives until Dad passed on, I have never seen Tom again. Once in Tom's house, he looked surprised at my unexpected coming. However, when I started inquiring about Karen, his face changed completely. He initially hesitated, but after I showed him the bank statements and told him what I found, he opened up himself to me fully without any restriction. Greg never mentioned her to you, he said, shaking his head. We all told him so. Karen is a no-no, Ethan. This isn't the first time she has done this to someone. Your father thought he could change her, and she would eventually settle down. But, well, you've seen how that turned out. I felt my heart sink. So he knew? Tom nodded in agreement and grimaced. Yes, he did know about her past, but he loved her still. He believed that as long as she was comfortable enough, she wouldn't repeat the same stunts again. That account that he set up was meant to see her through after he's gone, but we didn't need it for anything at all since long before then she had taken from him. As I walked away from Tom's house, I felt sick inside myself with terror. My father knew it all, what kind of creature Karen was, and yet chose to leave everything to her. Much worse than that, nothing for me. It wasn't long after talking with Tom that Karen arrived at my flat. She had been trying my lines several times without any luck, but finally showed up at my doorstep anyways. When I opened the door, she looked like a mess. Her eyes were red, face pale white. She clutched her phone on one palm, while holding onto her purse with another like she would escape any time soon. Ethan, please, she murmured with a hoarse voice, her vocal cords raw from crying. I understand that you're mad, and you probably hate me right now. However, there's something that I need to discuss with you urgently. I stood at the entrance of the room and looked at her with folded arms as if I was not really concerned about what she had to say. Karen, I am not obliged to do anything. She started approaching me while her voice became more desperate than ever before. Just hear me out. There is more to this than meets the eye. Not even an inch did I move or blink my eyes. More lies. No, she yelled, and then her voice broke unexpectedly amidst tears. No more lies. I swear it. When will you just let me speak? For a moment, I thought about shutting the door in front of her. Nevertheless, there was something in her tone that made me hesitate. Fear or trembling, maybe? She wanted to come in, but wary. Sitting at the corner of couch, Karen could hardly hold herself steady because of the deep emotion engulfing her body. On the other hand, I continued standing still with crossed arms, looking forward for any other excuse she had prepared today. It's true, she began softly, her eyes cast downwards. To you, I lied and hid the money. I didn't know how to tell you about it. When your dad died, I got really scared. Scared of being lonely. Scared that you would despise me. I do hate you, I said coldly. She winced but kept on going. I made mistakes. I know that now. But I did not take the money out of greed, Ethan. It was not my intention to hurt you, Ethan. I just don't know what else to say. Still shaking my head in disbelief towards her, I mumbled, You've done this before, right? You were married before this and did the same thing. Took all their money and left them with nothing. Karen's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to deny it, but no sound came out. Yeah, I said with hardness in my voice. I know. I found out everything. It wasn't just about me, you know? You've been doing this for years and years. It's not what it looks like, she murmured, almost inaudibly. With my arms crossed even tighter over my chest, I asked her, So then what is it, Karen? Because from here, it seems like a job to you. She drew in shaky breaths as tears streamed down her face. Your father wasn't. He wasn't the man you thought he was. My heart skipped a beat. What? Karen wiped at her eyes and her voice trembled as she said, Ethan. He was in big trouble. Not just a failing business or whatever, but deep shit kind of stuff. He had debts. Huge debts from gambling and, wait, let me finish. And he owed many people money, which is why he set up that account not just for me, but also for your security's sake. My mind spun around and round as I stared at her incredulously, saying, Gambling? Karen nodded, heavily emphasizing by the thickness of her voice the depth of emotions she was undergoing through. He didn't want anyone to find out or even you because this account. He set up that account so his creditors wouldn't come after him anymore because they would come after you too. There was nothing left for me to believe anymore. Around me, everything I believed about my father and Karen was falling apart. Did he truly hide all of this from me? And if so, why didn't Karen tell me about it until now? Days went by after that talk without speaking to Karen. I couldn't. The world had turned into an enigma for me. Was my dad a victim of Karen's manipulation, or did he have his own secrets concealed like her? That money still remained in that account, untouched over the whole period. I considered taking it, using it to pay off the debts I had been trapped under for years. However, something always pulled back at me every time I thought about it. That money seemed dirty now, stained with lies and treachery. Then one evening she called again. This time around, I picked up. Ethan, she spoke softly, I've been thinking about everything. I know we can't undo things, but I kept quiet because at that point in time I did not believe anymore in anything she said. She went on, I will give you the story, every bit of it. It has always been yours and I just didn't know how to let go. But I realize now that holding on only hurt us all. Silent, I looked at my handphone. After thinking for a while, she informed me, I am leaving town because I need a new beginning. There are so many things I have done that I wish I had not, and I have to figure out who I am apart from this. She did not expect me to forgive her, but she wanted me to get what is mine by right. Then, the line was dead. And for a long time after that, motionless in the empty room around me, sat still. Whether Karen was telling the truth, or if this was just another game, I didn't know then. Nevertheless, when I checked the account the next day in the morning, the money had been transferred. Every cent belonged to me. But it didn't feel like winning. This was something else altogether. Whether or not it could ever be otherwise remained an open question with me, still being unsure of anything though.